Hey, it's King Kaiju here, and I was quite shocked that I found on CBR.com, generally a rather respected organization, an article by a woman named Diane Darcy about how the representation on The Last of Us was failing, which if you watched episode, I don't know, any of them, kind of think it's the opposite. Well, let's see what she has to say. So a woman named Diane Darcy on CBR.com writes about how in episode 4 they failed on the representation of Sam and Henry. CBR.com is not generally known for these kinds of articles, so I had to kind of wonder what on earth was going on. Before we break this down, I wanted to bring up old Diane Darcy here, see some of the previous articles that she had written, try to find out what exactly is going on in this woman's head. So it starts off bad with her writing an article claiming that Audrey Hepburn's greatest romance wasn't George Peppard, it was Shirley MacLaine. But then I scrolled down a little bit more and I saw the headline that sums everything up, where she claims that Jodie Whittaker is the best doctor ever. Case closed. This woman is mentally unbalanced. So she starts this sham of an article off with a nice little laundry list of buzzwords for her types, such as women in refrigerators, bury your gays, buried your disabled, and the black guy dies first. Now, if you have not heard these, congratulations, your life is better off than most of us. If you haven't though, real quick, they're basically these ideas that there is this recurring theme of these things. So women in refrigerators refers to the fact that women are oftentimes introduced in some kind of narrative work and then either killed, captured, or eliminated early on as a motivation for the main male character moving forward. Bury your disabled, buried your gays, exact same thing. If you introduce gay or disabled characters, they're quickly pushed to the background because supposedly people are uncomfortable viewing them. And finally, black guy dies first is an old throwback to the idea that you're going to introduce a black character only to kill them off early because, of course, people don't really want to see black people. These concepts are trite, outdated, outmolded, idiotic, and a cornerstone of much of the woke ideology, clinging on them like dear life, completely ignorant of the fact that they have no meaning whatsoever. And when they do exist, so when some woman does die early in a movie in order to have a motivation for a male character, that's just the story. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way the writer has decided to provide motivation for the male character, because this is what they miss. It is one of the single most powerful motivators that humanity, all of humans, male and females, have the male as protector. When the female dies, the male has failed in his protector role, and he uses that as motivation to get revenge against those who caused him to lose that. It's very simple. It's very relatable. It is universally shared by all humans on the planet. It's actually shared even by this woke wacko. She's just mentally suppressed it to such a level, she probably can't get it anymore. So right off the bat, Diana takes exception with the fact that in the very first episode, the daughter, Sarah, dies. And then in the third episode, can't even keep track anymore, his girlfriend, Tess, dies, as examples of putting women in refrigerators. Now, the loss of a child is an insane motivator, but also, if you've actually watched the show, it affects him psychologically to where he has lost a lot of his will, not necessarily to live, but to enjoy life, to see life as anything but bleak. He's not exactly Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, but they do establish him as a loving father, a loving brother, and then after her death, he is a changed man. He can't go seek revenge, he can't destroy all the zombies on the planet, and he's devastated. That's a powerful motivator. It explains his character. It gives him an opportunity, which is what the game was about, what the show is clearly about, to grow and change. That is to say that you don't know, but it should be pretty obvious to a writer. You start out with him, a broken, negative, pessimistic man, through a new relationship with a surrogate daughter in Ellie. he becomes more positive, sees the good in life, etc., etc. As just one basic level plot thread that this writer Darcy can't get. Then his girlfriend dying is not just another motivating factor for him as a character, and gives the ability for the focus to be on just him and Ellie. That's the point. This Darcy woman doesn't understand that killing people off, taking them in and out of narratives, isn't about putting women in refrigerators. It's about what's best for the story. It's about what's best for the character. It's about what's best for accomplishing a goal that the writer has in store. There's a very different dynamic that plays out if Joel and Tess truck around the country with Ellie in tow than if it's just Joel and Ellie. And anybody can see that. Somebody with the most base understanding of how to structure a story can see that. Not this chick. She takes exception with Tess's death, and honestly, the quote that she has, I really almost think is a joke if I didn't know this whack job was serious about this. Her exact quote is, "Tess goes down, blowing up both herself and a swarm of infected, but not before one of the infected kisses her without her consent." Yes, you heard me correctly. This is why I honestly think that this is a joke, and am horrified by the fact that it isn't. A line like that shows a just insane level of disconnect from reality. This is a show about a zombie apocalypse with fungi-infested humans going batshit, tearing up, killing left, right, and she's expecting consent. You have got to be kidding me. Again, it's got to be a joke, right? I mean, it has to be, and yet it's not. How far gone out of this world, out of reality, out of common sense, out of the ability to have a rational thought are you to make a statement like that? It boggles the mind. So she finally gets around to Bill and Frank, and you would think, hey, she should be really happy about this, right? As stated, this was a phenomenal representation. She glosses over all of that and just focuses on one singular thing that you are not going to believe. So this is a direct quote. Referencing Bill and Frank committing suicide together, she says, "Thus, the show ends up with 2 dead gay men instead of 1. Contrary to Craig Mazin's comments on Bury Your Gays, episode 3 does not so much subvert the trope as much as it doubles down on it." It's at this point I have to wonder, did she even watch the episode? Because the idea is that Bury Your Gays is a trope that suggests that because people don't like gays, that when they're presented, they're quickly moved to the background of a narrative work. Bill and Frank were the narrative work for the whole episode. They were the opposite of buried. They were the spot. So for her to make a statement that killing them off at the end doubles down on the trope shows a just profound ignorance of her own claim to start off with, and 2, the episode in and of itself. So she finally gets around to Sam and Henry, and interestingly enough, she even brings up the reason given by the showrunner for why Sam is deaf. So she writes, according to Druckmann in the Inside Episode 5 featurette, the reason for the change to Sam's character was to make him more reliant on his brother Henry. This effectively turns Sam into a plot device for Henry's character development instead of a character of his own standing. So again, it begs the question, did she watch the damn episode? Sam was a character insofar as he actually was seen being a child, which is what he was, who was scared out of his wits and reliant on his brother. The fact that he was deaf really actually did make it much clearer why he was so reliant on him, and provided motivation at the end for why Henry killed himself, because he had lost his will to live, but had someone so reliant on him and dependent on him that he had to keep going. We also got to see a change. Sam, as he got more comfortable, as he was around Ellie, someone closer to his age than Henry, took on a more playful side, took on a more happy side. They even made comment about having not seen him smile or laugh in forever. And there's even a nice scene at the end where he says, what happens when you turn? He's self-aware. He is a character, but that's not enough for her. This woman, again, I don't know if she watched the episode or is so wrapped up in her own bullshit that she's just willing to write the dumbest stuff without putting any thought behind it other than buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. She then wraps up the entire lunacy of the piece into one state when she says, "The recurring pattern in all of these examples is that diverse characters in The Last of Us only get to be fully fleshed out people for one episode before meeting their doom. Their deaths then help to progress the storylines of its two white protagonists in some capacity." And there you have it, mental instability on display. You are dealing with a show about a zombie apocalypse where the focus is on the relationship of the two lead characters and a father-daughter situation as they progress through this horrible world. That's it. That's the basic premise. I don't know how she doesn't understand this. Pretty much every character along the way that they are going to meet needs to die. If they don't die, then they basically have to become part of the traveling group. It grows and grows and grows each time someone doesn't die. And if they do take someone on, it has to be short term, because eventually they'll die. Otherwise, you start out with a story of a man and a young girl, and you end up with a nice group thing that makes no sense. There isn't enough time. It completely derails the entire concept of growth, change, etc., etc. Above and beyond all of that, I'm really curious, and I've been curious for a long time, and this Darcy chick is just the latest in the example, there are a ton out there, is what exactly are they thinking or expecting it to look like? So that is to say, if you wrote a movie or television show where there is no strong motivation, such as a wife, girlfriend, mother, daughter, dying at the beginning to move forward a main character. And I want to make this very clear. That main character could be a woman. A woman losing her daughter or mother or lesbian wife could be motivation moving forward. That's oddly enough never brought up, right? We're not going to have that motivation. Then every single character that we introduce has to be effectively not white. Fine, have your all mixed race cast. Knock yourself out. Doesn't matter. The story's great and the characters are interesting. It's utterly irrelevant, which I think that most of these whack jobs would agree with that statement. Well, if that statement is true, the opposite is true. If there are people that are white, it's also irrelevant because it's all about the story and the character. But they won't concede that portion of it. All right, let's play your game. So we have our completely diverse cast. We've got handicapped, gay, etc., etc. No one is ever put into the background. So you don't have any character studies. You just have group dynamic. Because if you just have a character study, that means some characters have to be pushed to the background. But you're nothing but diverse, so none of them can be. Do you see where the logic loop starts to get a little messed up here? So effectively, you want to render all entertainment devoid of individual or small interpersonal growth between two. It has to be a group, because if it isn't, then someone gets pushed to the background. Now, I suppose in your messed up world, your gotcha is, oh, well, we'll make a program about a black woman and a disabled, gay, transgender, Indian child, and all they deal with are white people, and we push the white people to the back. There we go. Problem solved. I gotcha. Now we can have interpersonal growth. But you've just told me that pushing people to the background is wrong. Oh, well, no. It's okay if they're white. Why is it okay if it's white? Explain to me that one. And you could bring up any kind of bullshit you want about tropes and history and everything else, but at the end of the day, flatten all of it, and it's not right. You can't say it is wrong to push one group to the background, but not another. You have no justification for that narratively. Because guess what? All your history, all your tropes, all your ideas are completely irrelevant to the story and the characters. That's what these people don't understand. So there you have it, the insane rambling of a woke activist idiot somehow getting a voice on a forum on CBR.com. These are merely my views. What's yours? Let's talk about it. Obey your king. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification icon.